Hey everybody, what is up? This is Devin LaVore coming at you. And I just wanted to share a few things with you that I feel like would be really encouraging. And I want to preface that because I want you to consider what it looks like, biblically speaking, like before a promise comes to pass or before God moves mightily in a person's life, right? Let's consider Abraham. Do you know what Abraham was doing before God showed up to fulfill the promise for him? He was sitting at the front door of his tent. That's it. He was just chilling. I mean, what do we see with Abraham? We see Abraham is the man of faith who waited. We really see the theme of waiting on the Lord with him. That was his trial. That was his wilderness. Even though he was kind of going from place to place to place to place, his spiritual wilderness theme for which he gave God glory was he waited. And he waited 25 years. So he was a waiter, but so he was just sitting out in the front, just waiting. You know what that's like? When you're just out on the front porch and you just hanging out, you ain't got nothing to do. You're just chilling. You're not doing some purpose-driven life. You're not doing anything that's destiny. You're not doing anything like super special. You're not praying. You're not fasting. You're not, you don't have your head between your knees on top of Mount Carmel. You know what I'm saying? He was just sitting. He was just hanging out. Consider David. What was David doing before the promise came to pass for him? Well, what was it? I don't know if he raided Ziklag or what it was, but I just remember there was such a time of deep grief and just, I think so. They raided this one place, and then this other place, while they were raiding one place, came and raided them and took all of their people and and so they went, I think it was Ziklag, right? And they took all of their stuff back, and it was just such a difficult situation. And his heart was probably just crushed because he had gone through that kind of scenario so many times, like since he was a teenager. For those of you who know what it's like to wait on the promise of God, you know what it's like to go through a similar and same thing over and over and over and over and over again. Thinking that might somehow be some sort of bridge or transitional moment into the promise that God gave you, right? And then time goes on and you're just like, and so David was like, he wasn't necessarily in the best place. He was in a place of victory, but it's like, look at the circumstances, okay? Consider Hannah. She was one. It does not say in the scripture how many year after year after years she went. It just says year after year. So that's more than once or twice. And so we find her in a position where she's so grieved in spirit, so hollowed out in her soul, so broken down in her heart and her mind that she can't even pray out loud. You ever been there? You ever been so jacked up inside you can't even pray out loud? You know what I'm saying? You just can't. You're like, but you are praying. She was praying. She was seeking the Lord, and she was in such a bad place, the high priest thought she was drunk. You see what I'm saying? That's the place that she was in. How about the Syrophoenician woman that came to Jesus looking for a miracle, and Jesus rejected her a couple times? And it's like, wow, how would you like that to be the story of your miracle? You come to the Lord and he says no. And then it doesn't necessarily say no, but it seems like he's saying no. But you keep on coming anyway. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, and there's so many more examples like that, just where I mean, look at we know about the Esther and Mordecai and the nation of Israel during that time. It was, what was against them was death, a literal governmental decreed sentence of death was against the people. And they were like, what are we going to do? And God delivered there, But specifically about desires fulfilled and promises fulfilled. I remember the Lord, I wanted to get married so bad, but I just knew I had to wait for God's timing. And then when the timing came, it was super cool, but I still thought it was going to happen way quicker than it did, right? And what were the circumstances surrounding me actually meeting Michelle? Many of you have probably heard this. It's literally like the #1 video on my channel still to this day. If you want to go watch it, like How I Met My Wife, that's what it's titled. But I was I had already met 2 girls by that time. And the first one was just high mountaintop. But then when I met her, it was like instant plummet to the valley, because it was like, well, she's not the one. I knew on that first date. I just knew. You got to watch the whole video to see the whole story. But and then I just felt like I was supposed to keep going. And I met this other girl. It was just like, no. And I was in such a place of Ziklag David, Abraham at the front of his tent, Hannah holding on to the altar. I was in just a place of just, I could say there's a basement level to giving up. Okay, you can give up and you can be on the main floor of giving up. You just gave up. You don't be on the main floor. Then there's a basement level to giving up. You know what I'm saying? I was like in that little sub cellar underneath the basement. You go over to the side over there and there's that little door. Like, oh, where's this go to? Oh, look, there's some stairs. And it goes down into a lightless, dark, dense, dank area. That's where I was. I was like, no. And I told this girl, Michelle, that I was going to meet up with her at Panera. But I was in such a place, guys. I was in such a place of giving up that I was just like, no. Why am I going to go to another disappointment? I had great faith for a great disappointment. I was like, no. And then the Lord stepped in. Okay? The Lord stepped in and he was like, buddy, you better go. You said you were going to go. Now you gave your word. You can't, No, I'm not going to tolerate this. Your attitude is wrong. You can't be just telling people you're going to be somewhere and do something and then not do it. No, you not. Not if you want to go anywhere with me in my kingdom. You're not going to be that kind of guy. You make a decision, but you better go because you said you was going to go. And I was like, it sobered me up just a little bit, enough to just get up off my butt and just, go do what I said I was going to do. That's literally it, guys. You have no idea. I'm like, I'm doing this only because the Lord said so, and I have the fear of the Lord on me right now, and I'm going to go do what I said I was going to do, but I'm just going to go get this over with because I said I was going to do it. That was the circumstances surrounding my miracle. You see what I'm saying? Before we moved out here to Nashville, we had just started the PayPal thing at that time, so we weren't making enough money to do anything else but just get food. By the time we moved in December, we moved in the middle, toward the middle of December. December 17th, we actually took off from Kansas City to come here to Nashville. At that time, we had been served an eviction notice. Here we are hearing from God, walking with God, and it's like we're coming up on a definite mandated timeline, and we'd been served an eviction notice, and even the people who gave it to us were like, sorry, Dev, we have to do this legally. We don't want to. We just have to. There's nothing we can do. They were even trying to help us and everything. It was just like, no. It's like we just knew God was going to come through. We had a couple other options that we felt we could do. We could go here or go do that, but the Lord was like, don't do it. Don't do it. And we're like, okay. And so it put us in a position to just have to wait. And they said, well, we're going to change the locks on Monday. And this was probably like, I don't know, Tuesday or Wednesday. And I'm just like, we got nothing. We're seeing nothing. We don't know nothing. It's like, God, why don't you just give us the money that we need to pay off the rent, right? But he wouldn't. We would only get enough money to eat, you know? And then someone gave us an amount of money that allowed us to get out of there. Now, see, we could have used that amount of money to pay off the rest of our rent, but the Lord was like, no, you're out. You know, you got to go. It's time to fly. You know, like Key Nash says, up and away. Time to fly, man. Time to take off. And we're kind of like, we're seeing a little semblance of that right now. It's like right now, I'm like, Lord, I don't know what happened, but what happened is God happened, you know, ever since we come back from the Bible beat, just things are different because we're coming back at a time where it's Thanksgiving or whatever. But I don't know. It could be just the Lord just like, no, Devin, this is just me operating in your life. And we have a little semblance of that right now, because right now what we're getting in is great, but it's really just enough to keep us fed and keep us going. You know, we're not making any payments on this place yet, you know, and just like I said before, like the Joe's money and all that we talked to the lady, and she said, well, there's so many processes you have to go through. It's like, you're not going to get that until early next year at the earliest. And I was like, okay, see, and that's exactly why the Lord's like, don't put your hope on that money, you know, don't do that. And so again, I feel like this is also just a part of our story. Like, man, look at this. Look what God's doing. More signs that, ooh, man, we're getting ready to take off. See, the man of faith in me says we are getting ready to blast off. God's getting ready to hit an ignition button. God's getting ready to spread some wings. God's getting ready to create something it's just going to be there. You know, the wings are just going to be there. Provision just going to be there. It may not come the way we've been expecting it this whole time. You know, there might not be any ravens with sandwiches in their claws, you know, like we've been getting all this time. You know, God might have sent them somewhere else, you know. But ultimately, I feel like we're in a position where that's what's going to happen. And so I feel like, why am I sharing this? Because I feel like that's where we're at. We are in the midst of a promise being fulfilled, another miraculous blast off of the Lord, another manifestation of his power and his grace. But look at the circumstances surrounding us. We are surrounded by everything saying, man, you better get up and fend for yourself and do for yourself. And you know what I'm saying? You better panic and scurry and, you know, do something to keep yourself afloat. It's like, I can't keep myself afloat, man. The water's back there. My boat's almost off the waterfall. God's just going to have to come through or not. And that's exactly where we were in Kansas City. It's like we're up against this eviction deadline. God's just going to have to come through or not, and he did. God always comes through. And so it is with everyone biblically. When God fulfills his promise, a lot of times there is so much weirdness going on. Even with the birth of Jesus and Mary, there's a lot of just, I'm sure, cultural weird stuff going on, and I mean, just anytime God moves and does something, it's rarely is it just this simple, easy thing. Particularly when you're talking about the birth of something really significant and amazing that God's going to be doing. You know, I mean, sometimes it is, but in this case, I'm looking at a lot of and I believe it was the Holy Spirit that brought this to my mind. And he's just like, Dev, look at all these people. Look at what their life was like just before I stepped in and brought the promise to pass. You know what I'm saying? Like you take Simeon in the temple, you know, who the Lord promised, you will not depart the earth until you see the Messiah. He was just hanging out, chilling out, doing what he does. So in that situation, there wasn't a bad situation. Like in Abraham's life, there wasn't necessarily a bad situation, but he's just sitting there chilling, just waiting. And just so Simeon, he's probably in the same situation. I feel like I've got a bit of both. I'm surrounded by some stuff that's screaming at me, but I'm looking to the Lord, and I'm just like, no, I'm gonna look at the Lord. He's a better view than all this other stuff surrounding me, screaming lies at me, talking about how God's not gonna be faithful and how God's not gonna be true. I'm not gonna listen to that. I overhear it, but I'm ignoring it. Like Jairus, when they said his daughter died, he's like, hey, overhearing but ignoring. He said, don't listen to them. Only believe. Come on now, somebody need to hear that. I'm looking at the guy in the camera right there. Me right there. I need to hear that, And so I'm sharing it with you guys, praying that it is a blessing to you as well. God is not done. He's not finished. He's going to continue to be faithful and true. He's going to continue to be who he is, and he's going to get the glory for being who he is. Amen. And so I pray blessing on you guys, and just know that, just because it might look like it's very, very, very close to the birth, but it's surrounded by coyotes and jackals of circumstances, hey, that might just be a sign that that's exactly where you're at. You are in the exact right place. You've been thrown into the lion's den at work. That's okay. God's got a deliverance for you. That might be just a sign of your future promotion getting ready to take place. You know what I'm saying? So we walk by faith, not by sight, right? And so I will leave you guys with that, and I pray it blesses you. Okay? Bye-bye.